Recently, I've put out a video analyzing Yakuza 4, specifically a plot twist that created many issues for the game's story. And while that twist is one of the biggest issues with Yakuza 4, the rest of the story isn't very good either. It encapsulates some of the most prevalent issues when it comes to writing in these games, while also having its own problems that are completely unique to Yakuza 4. I was originally planning on making this a scene-by-scene analysis, but I realized that I was spending too much time recapping the story. Maybe some people would find that entertaining, but that's not really the type of video I want to make, so I'll be leaving out less important details as I go through the story chronologically, occasionally giving more detailed recaps when I feel it's necessary. This series will be divided into 4 parts. In each part, I'll be analyzing one of the game's major story sections. Each of these videos are going to be quite long, so feel free to skip around if you just want to hear my analysis of a certain section. The way Yakuza 4 opens is very unique from the other games. While the other opening scenes are usually more serious and pretty quickly set the story into motion, Yakuza 4's opening is much more laid back. It introduces us to Shun Akiyama, a loan shark who's currently procrastinating on his responsibilities. He's reading about a series of murders that have occurred in Kamurocho, the fictional Japanese district that this game takes place in. He's then called by his assistant Hana, who reminds him that he needs to collect money from his clients, prompting him to leave the office. It's a pretty laid back and inconsequential scene. All it does is introduce the player to Akiyama, his relationship with Hana, and a mysterious serial killer that we'll learn more about later on. Akiyama leaves the office to collect money from his clients, and on the way he recognizes a man named Kido, who's part of a local Yakuza group called Kanemura Enterprises. Akiyama wonders why Kido is in a hurry and decides to check in on him. We follow Kido inside the Kanemura building, where he gives a lot of exposition related to the main plot. Kanemura Enterprises is a low-ranking group under the Tojo clan, which is the largest Yakuza organization in the country. Their captain Arai is currently meeting with one of the higher-ups named Shibata. The two are interested in getting on good terms with the Majima family, who are the largest group within the Tojo clan. Kido is agitated because some men are causing commotion at a club owned by Kanemura, specifically by members of another Yakuza group called the Ueno Seiwa clan. Kido also explains that despite the Ueno being allies with the Tojo clan, the Tojo have much more power than them. This conversation isn't too interesting, but it gives a lot of information that will be very important as the story goes on. Despite Kido's explanation, one of his subordinates still doesn't understand why this Ueno Seiwa situation is a problem. Kido berates the man for this and doesn't bother explaining further. Akiyama then enters the building. He asks if he's interrupting them, but Kido says no and allows Akiyama to take a seat. Akiyama asks about their boss Kanemura, who is one of Akiyama's clients, but Kido tells him that he isn't here. Akiyama then tries to continue the conversation the men were having, since they were so loud that he overheard it from outside the building, but he's politely told by Kido that he should go, saying that they're busy and he doesn't know when Kanemura will be back. Kido seems respectful towards Akiyama, but he also isn't being completely honest with him. And Akiyama clearly isn't buying his lies, but chooses to comply anyway. Right before he leaves, Akiyama gives the confused Yakuza a better explanation of what Kido was talking about, explaining that the Ueno Seiwa are disrespecting Kanemura Enterprises by causing trouble on their turf. This is a really good way of showing how well Akiyama can connect with people. While Kido got annoyed and didn't bother explaining the problem, Akiyama showed the man respect and took time to explain the issue. And on the way out, Akiyama says out loud that Kanemura needs to do something in response to the Ueno Seiwa, and that he shouldn't forget about the terms of their agreement, confirming that he knows Kanemura is still in the building. Once Akiyama leaves the building, Kanemura Kanemura walks out of the room that he was hiding in, showing that he intentionally tried to avoid Akiyama. I thought this was weird since Akiyama seems to care about Kanemura to some extent, so I wish their relationship was given a bit more context. Kanemura is unsure how to deal with this Ueno situation. Kido believes that Arai can help, although because of his meeting, Kido doesn't know when he'll be back. Kanemura then agrees to leave this situation up to Arai. The nameless Yakuza from earlier asks Kido who Akiyama is, and Kido explains that he runs a loan company called Sky Finance, being known by many people as the lifeline of Kamurocho, being someone who loans people money who have nowhere else to go. He's gained notoriety for the unusual tests he will put his clients through and charging zero interest for his loans. This creates a bit of intrigue around Akiyama's character, specifically around what these tests of his are and what motivates him. Overall, this scene provides some very strong characterization, introducing important elements around Akiyama's character while not giving everything away. In general, this chapter is a really strong opening for Yakuza 4, introducing multiple characters and plot points that will affect the entire story from here on out. I can't say that many of them get resolved in a satisfying way, but I still want to give credit where it's due. Meanwhile, we see Akiyama hanging out with a group of homeless people who he bought drinks for. He happens to spot Arai, who is finishing up his meeting with Shibata. Shibata congratulates Arai for unknown reasons and pays him before being driven off. Arai then gets a call about the club where the Ueno Seiwa are causing trouble. Akiyama overhears this call and decides to intervene. Before Arai can arrive at the club, Akiyama is able to get there first, where he finds the two Ueno thugs harassing the employees. We'll later learn that their names are Ihara and Mishima. Akiyama intentionally provokes Mishima into attacking him, but Akiyama dodges the attack and knocks the man out cold. Ihara is surprised by this, saying that this wasn't part of the deal, but before Akiyama can ask what he's talking about, he's interrupted by Kido, who tells Akiyama that Arai is going to take a while. This creates the question of why the Ueno Seiwa men are here. It initially seemed like they were just some random Yakuza causing commotion, but we now know that there's something else going on behind the scenes. Although it is a bit weird that Akiyama doesn't question Ihara further, as if he completely forgot about what Ihara said after Kido distracted him. Ihara suspects the two of planning to cause a Yakuza war. This angers Kido since Ihara is the one causing a scene on their turf. But before Kido can start a fight, Akiyama stops him, intending to resolve this issue on his own to prevent war between the clans. This shows how Akiyama is willing to go out of his way in order to help people out, which is pretty much a fundamental part of his character in every game he's in. It's only after the fight with Ihara that Arai actually shows up. Akiyama apologizes for going overboard, but Arai doesn't seem bothered at all. Akiyama says how Arai has always been able to read his mind, since he didn't even need to ask Akiyama why he started this fight. Arai understood that Akiyama did this for Kanemura's sake, who wants to eventually retire from the Yakuza and not get involved in any unnecessary conflicts. This exchange is maybe a bit on the nose, but it establishes Akiyama's bond with Arai decently well and shows how far he's willing to go for the sake of his clients. Akiyama says that Arai has what it takes to become big in the criminal underworld, comparing him to ex-Tojo chairman Kiryu Kazuma, but Arai says that he couldn't possibly compare to the fourth chairman. I love that the main character of the entire series is just mentioned in a throwaway line like this. It adds scale to the setting by showing how influential Kiryu is. Akiyama then reminds Arai that he only got to where he is in life thanks to an unlikely opportunity, and that something similar could happen to Arai. Their exchange is then interrupted by Ihara, who points his gun at Arai after waking up. Arai tries to reason with Ihara, telling him that there will be massive consequences if he pulls that trigger, giving him the chance to walk away, no questions asked. This does show how Arai tries to talk his way out of dangerous situations, explaining to Ihara why he shouldn't shoot him and giving him an easy way out. But Ihara shoots him anyway, either because he accidentally pulled the trigger or was so dumb that he only realized he made a bad decision after making it. I'm still not completely sure. Ihara then grabs Mishima and rushes out of the bar with him. Arai, who is only grazed by the bullet, tells Kido to go after them. We then get a really weird line where Arai implies that Akiyama has some ulterior motive for getting involved in this situation. To my knowledge, it never really gets elaborated upon, so I don't know what the point of this line was. Arai sets out to find the Ueno Seiwa men himself. Then, right after Akiyama leaves the bar, he receives a call from Hana, who can't leave the office since there's a fight happening outside of Sky Finance. Akiyama assumes at first that this isn't a big deal, but then realizes that the Ueno Seiwa clan is involved, and runs over to Sky Finance to investigate. Once he's nearby, he hears a gunshot coming from the back alley. He carefully walks down the alley to find Arai standing over Ihara's dead body, now meaning that conflict between the clans is inevitable. Arai says maybe the opportunity that Akiyama mentioned wasn't meant to be, and leaves the crime scene before explaining anything. This chapter does a pretty good job at creating intrigue around Arai, introducing aspects of his character while still leaving an air of mystery around him. The rest of the story will fail to pay this off in a satisfying way, but I'll leave that for later in the series. Suddenly, a man enters the scene who will later learn to be named Tanimura. After he starts inspecting the corpse, he tells Akiyama that he should run. He understands that the real killer just left, but if Akiyama sticks around, then the police will assume that he did it. Akiyama then asks Tanimura who he is. Tanimura doesn't outright say it, but it soon becomes clear that he's a cop. He warns Akiyama about some bad people on the police force, who are perfectly willing to beat confessions out of people just because they feel like it. But before Akiyama can do anything, he's apprehended by the police. And rather than explaining the situation to the other officers, Tanimura warns Akiyama about a specific cop named Sugiuchi and leaves the crime scene right after. This is yet another strong character introduction that shows us a lot about Tanimura without over-revealing. I have mixed feelings on his character, but I can't deny that this is an effective way to introduce him. Also, I want to quickly mention one of my favorite parts about Yakuza 4, which is how it adds a sense of scale to Kamurocho as a setting. The game takes this location that players are well familiar with and make it feel so much larger. A big part of this is the addition of new locations that weren't accessible before, but also by showing how the events of past games affect the present. We get a flashback scene where we find Akiyama sleeping on the street wearing less fancy clothes than he does in the present, but we soon realize that this is taking place during Yakuza 1, as we see the explosion at the top of Millennium Tower, which caused a massive amount of money to fly onto the streets of Kamurocho, and Akiyama frantically starts collecting money along with the other people around him. I really like how Akiyama's backstory is directly affected by the events of previous games, showing how the actions of previous characters have had a ripple effect on the setting as a whole. After Akiyama is released from the police station, he gets a call from Hana telling him that a lot of work has piled up, and that he needs to go to Sky Finance right away. Once Akiyama returns to the office, he finds that Hana isn't there. He then tries to light a cigarette, but is having trouble finding his lighter. While searching through a drawer, he stumbles across an old picture of himself with some other people. He pauses for a second, but then closes the drawer as if he's trying to suppress a memory of his. We then see a woman enter the office who calls herself Lily. We'll learn later on that her actual name is Yasuko, but since that's the name she goes by throughout Akiyama's part, I'll just be calling her that. Lily then takes off her sunglasses, revealing that she looks exactly the same as the woman from Akiyama's photo, although she doesn't seem to recognize him. I thought that this was going to be elaborated upon, but it was just an insane coincidence where this major character looks the exact same as someone from Akiyama's past. Yakuza 4 has a lot of contrivances with its story, and as for the game's first half, this is one of the most egregious. Lily heard that Sky Finance offers limitless loans with no interest. Akiyama asks where she heard about this, but Lily doesn't answer. He also asks how much Lily wants, but she doesn't answer that either. While I don't despise Lily's character like some people do, I do find her a bit annoying, and one of the biggest reasons is the way she talks. It can take her ages to finish a sentence and she's constantly stuttering. She is a bit more well-spoken in later scenes with Akiyama, but since she doesn't have that much screen time, the scenes where she acts like this really stand out. Akiyama borrows Lily's lighter so he can light his cigarette, after which he reads the words "Drama Queen" on the lighter. He asks Lily if she used to work there. She says that she used to, but not anymore. This will be another small detail that will be important for the serial killer plot point, specifically for the reveal that Lily is the killer. Although I do find it questionable why Lily would steal and carry around a lighter from a place where she killed someone, as it would only make it easier to trace the murder back to her. Akiyama asks Lily again how much money she needs, since he can't help her if she doesn't say anything. Lily then asks for 100 million Japanese yen in the next 10 days, with no guarantee that she will be able to pay him back. Akiyama tells Lily that she's asking for a lot, causing her to panic and call herself foolish for making this request. But before she can leave, Akiyama says that he's still willing to make a deal. He informs Lily that he puts all his clients through tests to make sure that he can trust them, and that the more a client asks for, the more difficult their test will be. But if they pass, he will loan the client the money on whatever terms they established. He asks Lily if she still wants to take the test knowing this, which she agrees to, saying that it's the only option she has. We now know more about how Akiyama runs his business. He's willing to lend large amounts of money without interest, but he first needs to make sure that he can trust his clients. Akiyama tells Lily that he'll need time to set up the test, and that they can begin tomorrow. Right before she leaves, Akiyama asks what her name is, which she says is Lily. Akiyama asks her if that's her real name, but she dodges the question, after which leaving the building. Halfway through Akiyama's part, we see a meeting that's taking place at Tojo Clan headquarters, and is the first time where we see a familiar face from the previous games. Daigo Dojima is the current leader of the Tojo, and has been an important character since Yakuza 2. The man he's meeting with is Isao Katsuragi, who is the leader of the Ueno Seiwa clan. Daigo wishes to put this conflict to rest, giving Katsuragi a large amount of money as an apology for Ihara's death. Katsuragi clearly isn't satisfied by this, so Daigo brings Shibata into the room, who takes responsibility for Arai killing Ihara. He gets on his hands and knees to apologize, and even reveals that he cut off his pinky to make amends. Katsuragi, however, shows him respect, telling Shibata that someone as powerful as him shouldn't be bowing down to the leader of an unimportant clan. Katsuragi also says that cutting off pinkies as punishment is an outdated practice, and that there are other ways to make amends. Daigo asks what he's implying. Katsuragi claims that Ihara was promoted to lieutenant right before his death, and would have been an extremely valuable member of the Ueno Seiwa clan. For this reason, not even Daigo's apology is enough to make up for his death. Katsuragi acknowledges that despite being allies on the surface, the Tojo clan do outrank the Ueno Seiwa clan, but claims that his subordinates still view the two clans as equals and won't forgive the Tojo clan so easily. Katsuragi gives Daigo two options: to either hand over Ihara's killer or hand over ownership of Kamurocho Hills, the extremely profitable land that the Tojo clan owns. Daigo is outraged by this demand, saying that Ihara can't possibly be worth as much as Kamurocho Hills, but Katsuragi explains that this isn't a matter of money but Yakuza honor. He says that the clan will be satisfied with Arai's death, but if that can't happen, they would only be satisfied by the death of a Tojo member equal to Ihara in rank, that being Goro Majima, the leader of the Majima family and owner of Kamurocho Hills. But since he knows that killing someone that important is too much to ask, he'll accept ownership of Majima's property as an alternative. Katsuragi is very clearly taking advantage of this situation, using the death of Ihara as leverage over the Tojo clan. A large element of Katsuragi's character is creating elaborate schemes in order to benefit himself. While not exceedingly intelligent, he appears to be pretty competent in his introduction scene. This will eventually create issues when the story tries to make him look like an idiot, but that's more of an issue with later scenes than it is this one. We also get introduced to Sugiuchi in Akiyama's part, although he's only going to become important later in the story. Akiyama encounters him after his first visit to the police station. This scene doesn't tell us too much about Sugiuchi, other than him being kind of annoying and that he could potentially cause trouble for Akiyama. Later in the part, Akiyama has another conversation with Sugiuchi. He returns to Sky Finance after his second visit to the police station and finds Sugiuchi waiting for him. Akiyama assumes that he's just here to question him again, but Sugiuchi explains that he's here to protect Akiyama. The Tojo clan are desperate to capture Arai in order to satisfy Katsuragi's demands. Specifically, the Shibata family are trying to track down Arai before the police or Ueno Seiwa can. And because Akiyama was close to Arai, the police will be watching Akiyama to protect him, but also see if he's contacted by Arai. Before Sugiuchi can leave, Akiyama asks him why the criminal investigation department is involved and not organized crime, to which Sugiuchi doesn't answer. Akiyama suspects Sugiuchi of doing all of this to get promoted, which makes Sugiuchi angry and tell Akiyama to mind his own business. Sugiuchi then thinks out loud, wondering what he's even doing with his life. Akiyama is confused by this, but Sugiuchi tells him to forget about it, implying that he's had a very difficult time working on the police force. We're learning a lot more about Sugiuchi in this scene. He's showing a suspicious amount of interest in the Ueno Seiwa situation, especially considering which department he's in. We also learn that he is unhappy with his current position. Both of these plot points will be very important for his character as the story progresses. Sugiuchi then leaves the office as Lily arrives for her test, and Akiyama reveals that Lily's test is to work at a cabaret club that he owns and raise 3 million yen in the next 3 days. If you don't know, cabaret clubs are a type of nightclub in Japan where you pay for women to talk to you and pour you drinks. I feel mixed about Akiyama's choice for Lily's test. On one hand, he needed to make sure that he could trust her before loaning her this money, and since he's on a time limit, having her work at an establishment he owns does make sense. But my problem is that it implies that Akiyama treats his clients differently based on their gender, since you can only really be in this position if you're a woman. Maybe it would have been better if he mentioned how he's put men through similar tests, but there's no information that would indicate this. I don't feel comfortable saying that he's an awful human being for doing this, but I find it a little bit questionable for a character that's supposed to be endearing. But despite the questionable nature of this test, Akiyama seems pretty supportive throughout. making it clear that despite giving Lily a difficult task, he wants nothing more than for her to succeed. But unfortunately, the scene right after paints him in a much more negative light. This might not be the intention of the writers, but that's very much how it comes across. After Lily finishes her work for the day, Akiyama tells Lily to go on a date with him, and he's intentionally ambiguous about whether this is part of the test or not. This feels pretty slimy on Akiyama's part. This date clearly isn't part of the test, yet he places Lily in a position where she has no choice but to say yes, since for all she knows, she'll fail the test if she refuses. This gets even worse as the date progresses, but first I want to talk about an exchange that I actually like. While walking around town, Lily notices a building that she doesn't remember being there. Akiyama is surprised since the building has been there as long as he's been in Kamurocho. Lily eventually recognizes it, but since it's now surrounded by taller buildings, it didn't stand out as much. Lily reflects on her life in Kamurocho many years ago. She was broke and lived in a small apartment, but she was still happy with her life. She then wonders out loud why some men will work hard to be rich and in the process neglect their loved ones. Akiyama says that it's hard to make people happy without money, and that it can make people desperate to work towards a better life. But Lily just wishes that her life stayed the same, saying that she would have been much happier. It's a nice moment that gives some context for who she is as a person, but it's then followed by a scene that I absolutely despise. Akiyama says that if money really does make people happy, then maybe he could do the same for Lily. He then kisses Lily completely unprompted, and while Lily seems surprised for a moment, she decides to go along with it. Afterwards, Akiyama asks why she didn't pull away. Lily says that she doesn't know, but thought that it felt right. Lily then asks Akiyama why he kissed her, to which he says that he hasn't felt this way in years, referring to his ex-girlfriend. This once again makes Akiyama seem like an asshole. For one thing, he kisses Lily without asking first or even knowing if she's in a relationship. He even expected her to pull away after he tried this, which would be a completely reasonable thing to do in this situation. And once again, Lily is in a position where she couldn't say no even if she wanted to, since this might be part of the test for all she knows. The fact that Lily loves Akiyama back doesn't really matter here, since there's a clear power imbalance that makes their relationship very uncomfortable. I really like Akiyama, but I have to mentally separate him from this scene, since it makes this otherwise kind character look pretty awful. It's also very difficult to believe any romantic chemistry between these two. They get along well, but I have a hard time believing that they're madly in love. I don't think that it's a stretch to say that Akiyama and Lily's relationship is the worst part of Akiyama's storyline. At best, it's very contrived with little romantic chemistry, and at worst, it's pretty toxic due to Akiyama taking advantage of his power. It's a big issue with Yakuza 4 that I rarely see talked about. The next day, we see Akiyama and Kido having a conversation. Akiyama asks him if there's any sign of Arai, but Kido still can't find him. Since the Tojo clan is planning to hand him over to the Ueno Seiwa clan, Kido needs to find him before that happens. He wants to know the truth of why Arai killed Ihara, thinking that he wouldn't do so without a good reason. But Akiyama says that Arai's reasons won't matter to the Tojo clan. All that they care about is putting an end to the Ueno Seiwa problem. Arai was aware of this and went into hiding for that reason. Akiyama tells Kido to track down Arai before anyone else can, giving him money to help him in his search. Kido then asks Akiyama why he cares so much about Arai. Akiyama tries to avoid the question again, but Kido is desperate for answers and won't take Akiyama's money until he explains himself. Akiyama tells Kido that Arai saved his life many years ago. He used to have a good job at a bank, but got fired after being falsely accused of embezzlement. For unknown reasons, 1,000,000 yen went from a client's account to Akiyama's, and the bank agreed to not press charges as long as Akiyama accepts his termination. But Akiyama still wanted to find the truth, using his money to follow whatever leads he could, but that eventually led to him becoming broke and homeless. But after the Millennium Tower explosion in 2005, Akiyama was able to obtain 1,000,000 yen, but when he tried to get some sleep, he gets attacked by street thugs who almost steal his money. And this is when he first meets Arai, who beats up the thugs and returns Akiyama's money to him. Arai promises to Akiyama that he will make Kamurocho a better place, and from there, Akiyama gained a great amount of respect for Arai and truly believed that he could bring positive change to Kamurocho. Akiyama compares Kamurocho to being like a jungle that attracts all kinds of different people, but the one similarity between them is a dream. Everyone has some goal that they want to achieve, and Akiyama believes that someone like Arai could set an example for everyone else being able to achieve their goals. Even after Arai's questionable actions, Akiyama still has faith in Arai and wishes to save his life. Now understanding Akiyama and Arai's bond, Kido becomes even more dedicated to finding Arai and leaves the office to begin his search. I really like this scene. It provides context for Arai and Akiyama's relationship, and once again shows how kind of a person Akiyama is, wanting to help other people achieve their dreams. It's one of his best moments in the entire game, and I just wish it didn't come so soon after one of his worst. There isn't too much to discuss in the next couple scenes, so I'll just quickly skim over the most important plot points. While Akiyama is collecting money from his clients, he stumbles across a bar called Drama Queen, the same bar Lily said she used to work at. But Akiyama learns that not only did she never work there, but that the boss of this establishment has been murdered. After investigating the room, Akiyama learns that the Drama Queen boss has connections to the Shibata family, and that he has multiple lighters which look the exact same as Lily's. When Akiyama returns to Sky Finance, he learns that Hana and Kido were attacked by a Yakuza group called the Hatsushiba clan. They've abducted Kido and stole the client registry for Sky Finance. When Akiyama tracks down Kido, he learns that Hatsushiba was doing a favor for the Shibata family. They stole the client registry so they could find information about Lily, who's likely being targeted by Shibata for killing people that are connected to them. Akiyama has clearly put the pieces together, but it's only in the next scene that he spells it out for the audience. Akiyama then gets called by the manager of his club, who informs him that Lily has earned 3.8 million yen in the past 3 days, exceeding the required amount to qualify for the loan. Akiyama then arranges a meeting with Lily to deliver the money. When they meet, Lily says that she was initially planning to take the money and run, but is now dedicated to paying Akiyama back as soon as she can. But Akiyama tells her that she doesn't have to pay him back anything, with the explanation that he isn't in this business for money, but to help change people's lives. Lily then asks why Akiyama chose this specific test, and Akiyama answers that it wasn't as much to test Lily's resolve as it was to test himself. He says that he isn't the best judge of character, as he's been betrayed many times over the years, mentioning getting fired from his job, his fiancée leaving him, and the recent situation with Arai makes it difficult for him to know who he can trust. He only chose this because he found Lily alluring enough to make 3 million yen in only 3 days, and he just wanted to see if his hunch was correct. He apologizes for putting her through something so stupid, but Lily doesn't mind at all. This is really strange reasoning on Akiyama's part. You'd think that he tested Lily to see if he could trust her, but instead the only point of the test was to see if she could pass? Does this mean he cares more about proving himself correct than improving her life? This is a really weird addition to his character that the story never really elaborates upon. Akiyama then reveals that Lily is the one who killed Kanemura and the Drama Queen manager, which he figured out after investigating Drama Queen and Hatsushiba, also realizing that the Shibata family were after Lily this whole time and not Akiyama. There's even a bit of foreshadowing for this earlier on, when Akiyama and Kido discuss Kanemura's death. They speculate that Kanemura's killer likely seduced him beforehand based on evidence found by the police. Kido doesn't believe that Kanemura could be easily manipulated like that, but Akiyama doesn't write off the possibility. He explains to Kido what a femme fatale is. Basically that there are some people so alluring that it can lead to you making some unwise decisions. This both foreshadows how Lily got close to her victims and how Akiyama would start making some unwise decisions the closer he became to her. While this reveal was set up decently well, I have a hard time believing that a character this shy and lacking in charisma is meant to be this irresistible femme fatale. We see moments where Lily is a bit more confident, but even those make it hard to believe that she could effortlessly seduce people. Akiyama then asks why she committed these murders, but according to Lily, Akiyama gave the option to either pay back his loan in the future or answer this question, which confused me since Akiyama doesn't say anything like this. He never prefaced his question by saying it was a requirement for the loan, but anyway, Lily chooses not to answer his question, instead promising to pay him back once she has enough money. She's planning to leave town in order to take care of something important and won't be seeing Akiyama for a while. Akiyama tells her that the money can wait and that they should meet up again once she gets back. I don't know why Akiyama decided to give her the money now that he knows that she killed Kanemura, someone who he clearly cared about to some extent. You'd think he would be furious and refuse to give her the loan, but this doesn't even seem to cross Akiyama's mind, even telling her that they should meet up when she comes back to Kamurocho. I don't know if the reason for this is him being in love with Lily, but if so, that makes him look beyond pathetic. Akiyama then walks back to Sky Finance to talk with Hana, telling her that he lent all the money in one go and that he gets the feeling that Lily won't be paying them back. Hana is rightfully outraged by this, asking Akiyama what's wrong with him. Akiyama doesn't seem to think it's a big deal, but then Hana says she's quitting and runs away. Akiyama chases Hana across the city, eventually catching up to her after she gets exhausted. Hana calls Akiyama crazy for giving away so much money to a stranger, saying that he only did it because Lily reminded him of his ex. Akiyama admits that he was surprised by Lily looking just like his ex and ended up developing feelings for her, but insists that it isn't the reason he gave her the loan. But Hana is still frustrated that Akiyama isn't able to get over his ex, reminding Akiyama that she left the moment he got fired. Akiyama briefly lashes out, but then admits that he hasn't been able to get over her, and he isn't sure if that will ever change. I can't tell if the point of this scene was to reveal that Akiyama wasn't actually driven by his obsession for Lily, or if he's just in denial. If his obsession hasn't been affecting his decisions, then it makes even less sense that he would give Lily the money. But if he was driven by obsession this entire time, I don't know why this scene is heavily implying otherwise. Once again, I just wish the story actually explored this aspect of his character rather than making it so unclear. Not long after this scene, Akiyama gets another call from the club manager telling him that there's Yakuza at the club who are looking for Lily. When Akiyama arrives, he finds one of the Yakuza singing karaoke to his subordinates. Akiyama introduces himself as the owner of the club and asks who the man is. The man's name is Minami, who is part of the Majima family. Akiyama is surprised by this due to the Majima family's reputation, but Minami doesn't seem very interested in talking and starts singing another song. Akiyama then picks up a remote to turn off the karaoke machine. Minami asks why he did this and chucks the microphone straight at Akiyama. Akiyama feigns ignorance, saying that he hit the wrong button since the room is too dark. Akiyama is clearly expecting Minami to get angry, but Minami actually believes Akiyama and tells him not to worry about it. This is actually a really good subversion. The Yakuza series has accustomed me to people starting fights for no good reason. Even Akiyama was expecting Minami to attack him, so it was pretty funny to see Minami act somewhat polite in this situation, brushing off this inconvenience like nothing happened. As Minami is trying to turn the machine back on, Akiyama asks him why he's here. Minami says that they're here for someone named Lily, but Akiyama informs him that she won't be coming, as today was her last day working at the club. Minami admits that he doesn't know why Lily matters, but was instructed by his boss Majima to track her down. Minami asks Akiyama where she is, but Akiyama says that he isn't going to sell out his employees and asks him to leave. But Minami says he isn't leaving until he knows where Lily is. Akiyama gives one last warning to leave the club, which provokes Minami into fighting him. Eventually their fight is interrupted by Majima himself, who's noticeably more serious than he was in the previous games. Majima asks if Lily is here, but Akiyama tells him that she skipped town. Akiyama asks if Majima has anything to do with the Shibata family, but Majima doesn't seem to know anything about that. Majima then reveals that Lily's real name is Yasuko, and he's searching for her in order to protect her. When Akiyama asks why, Majima says it's to make amends for something he did back in 1985. This is a pretty good cliffhanger to leave Akiyama's part on, where we see the return of a fan favorite character who ends up having history with one of the new characters. This is also intriguing since it alludes to Majima's backstory, since we haven't gotten much information about his past in the previous games. Overall, it's an intriguing scene that directly leads into the game's next part. Despite my issues with Yakuza 4 as a whole, I think Akiyama's part is genuinely good. Most of the major plot points are introduced well, the characterization is very strong with the exception of a couple scenes, and there's even some foreshadowing that's relatively subtle. There are minor gripes I have, and the whole romance subplot is pretty terrible, but the storyline still shows a ton of potential, and if the rest of Yakuza 4 was on par with Akiyama's part, I wouldn't be nearly as critical of it. But as the game goes on, more issues with its narrative will become apparent. My other videos won't be quite as long since the sections of the game they cover are a bit shorter, and I won't have to worry about setting the stage too much now that most of the major players have been introduced. I'm hoping to finish this series by the end of the year, but I'm pretty slow so it's hard to say for sure. But let me know what you thought about this video in the comments, or if there was anything important that I missed. Anyways, that's about it. Thanks for watching.